Hello, and welcome to the show. My name's Novi, and I'm a regular researcher contributor here on the People's Voice Network. And I am starting the first of a multi part series on our energy crisis, how our system works, why the United States system is a system for producing energy is particularly corrupt, why we haven't had green energy as soon as possible, and what we could do to address this matter. So, tonight is part one, which I'm going to do as an overview of the topic and go into just how much the oil companies are messing with us and causing problems. Now, I per- I personally think that we need to get to zero carbon emissions and net zero as soon as possible to avoid a climate collapse. That's incredibly important, but for many reasons, the least of which the fact that cars that would be able to run on this kind of energy are still very unaffordable, and public transit is not accessible in many parts of the country. We're still going to have to stay on our system for at least a little bit. So in the meantime, the least that we could do is kind of try to lessen our consumption and figure out other ways to manage it, right? Right. So let me get this shared up. I'm sorry that the broadcast is starting a little late. We had some technical difficulties. My computer thought that it was right now, well, actually, an hour and a half ago, that uh, it was the best time to install Windows 11. So hold on just a moment while I get started. Okay, so the perpetual oil crisis, and we're doing a deep dive into that today. So, over this series, we're going to go into four different modes. Number one, artificially choking the supply, which causes inflation to rise because oil is needed for everything, for procurement of food, for people getting to their jobs, and all sorts of other things. And instead of wages being increased to compensate for that fact, we are actually seeing wages decrease by some really dumb companies and having people going hungry as a result. The second part, we're going to go into the oil permit system and how egregious that is. Third, we're going to go into the fact that oil companies often buy patents and trademarks on new ways to form green energy techniques in order to cease or slow down operation. That's why we see the ads with ExxonMobil saying we're researching into green energy to do with algae, but we haven't seen a whole bunch of how they're going to do that and seeing how long it's taking. Four is working with other governments and other corporations in order to destabilize regions that fight back, either by nationalizing their businesses or trying to compete with the United States. So, part one, choking supply. Oil companies in the United States are sitting on a nearly 10,000 unused land permits, an all-time high. Due to this means that land that is already approved for production, and people can drill on there. Now, this can happen for many reasons. This can happen for many reasons. The first of all, it's actually really expensive to drill on land that hasn't been drilled on before because you have to explore it. If you're ethically conscious at all, you need to make absolutely certain you're not going to do terrible environmental impact. That we know these companies aren't that environmentally conscious, and you have to deal with people in the neighborhood who say for right reasons they don't particularly want oil drilling or fracking in their area. But still, 10,000 permits. According to the Bureau of Land Management, the amount of permits have increased drastically in the past fiscal quarter. And I'm going to share that on screen for you now. Oh, hi, Ware. It's really nice to see you. Okay, hold on just a second. I'm sorry. So the application for permit to drill status report. This basically means that according to the government, they have done all their paperwork, they've done the environmental impact study, they've done everything they need in order to drill. Now, the most drilling sites are going to be in places like California, Colorado, New Mexico is a big place, Wyoming, and others. So these are all the ones from December of last year and the growth. So as you can see, there are thousands and thousands of sites available. And the growth from the month before, which means that permits are growing at a huge rate. Now, what does that mean for you? In theory, if there's more oil permits, that means that oil companies would be drilling more. That means the prices would be lower because everything else derives on it in order for trucking and transportation issues. But that isn't the case at all. Now, many in the oil industry have blamed Biden, saying that he's at fault for doing it, citing environmental concerns. Now, these environmental concerns are really valid, and Biden has stopped the permit system several times temporarily due to corruption. But that's not really stopping them. Here we go to Fox 25 News, which is a local news team, and they did a fact check on this claim. Okay. So, now this Fox 25 out of Oklahoma. President Biden announced that the U.S. will ban Russian oil permits in its latest move to hurt Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. But he warned that the move would likely increase already surging gas prices. For various reasons, even though the U.S. could make virtually of its own fuel by itself, we get a lot of oil overseas due to the artificial restriction of the oil supply. While many Republican lawmakers applauded Biden's move, it came with a caveat that he should ramp up U.S. energy production and blasting the administration's energy policies. However, Occidental Petroleum Corp. CEO Vicki Hollub at an energy conference in Houston pointed to worker shortages and supply chain issues as big challenges for the industry right now. She said both are not adequately recognized as a significant impediment to growth. Basically, companies are having trouble finding qualified workers and have long onboarding processes with lengthy safety training involved. Now, safety training is actually really important because, and if they were actually doing this, then we should see incidents in oil rigs going down. However, according to OSHA reports, that hasn't been the case, as we'll be covering 2 weeks from now. And then there's the price of oil itself. Oil prices should mean that companies want to drill more right now. According to the ExxonMobil CEO, the primary objectives we've had in looking at the portfolio is less about volume and volume targets and more about the quality and profitability of barrels we're producing. So, what does that mean for you? Instead of actually controlling the oil prices and making sure there's a steady supply of oil throughout the Russia-Ukraine war and other conflicts, they're taking advantage of this by choking off the supply even more. So, opponents to Biden and other people across the world could say, "Hey, look, it's Russia's fault. It's Russia's fault for attacking this defenseless country, and now we can't afford food and we can't afford other things that we need." When in reality, it's more to do with the oil companies not wanting to produce when they have the ability to do so. And let me share my screen and show some more information. The Biden administration has temporarily paused the granting new permits, which has been challenged in court by the oil industry. It was challenged in court back in February 2022, and the pause on permits was lifted just a few short days later. What this means for Earth Day is that we're nowhere near closer to getting green energy, and the ways to do it safely, which have been done through this permit process, have basically been ignored in favor of calls for drilling in the National Arctic Wildlife Reserve and other measures. So, again, it's business like usual. They're profiting off of everybody's misery and killing our planet to boot. This is the first part of a multi-part series. Thank you for bearing with me on the technical issues. I promise next week will be smoother, inshallah. Anyway, thank you and have a great day. Oh, and please like and subscribe.